Discover the incredible act of love that transformed a billionaire's paralyzed twins' lives. Jack Thompson, a self-made titan of industry, sat at the head of his grand dining table, a masterpiece of marble and wood. The laughter that once filled this space echoed like a ghost, haunting him as he stared at the vacant seats opposite him. His daughters, Emma and Lily, were imprisoned in their own bodies, mere shadows reflected in their hollow stares. The weight of their shared trauma swelled in the room, thickening the air. The walls dripped with memories of joy that now felt like daggers, reminding Jack of his greatest failure, a failure to connect. The evenings had turned into stale discussions about therapy schedules and doctors. Jack's world was one of empire building, yet nothing in his portfolio of patents or billion-dollar deals could help him mend the bond with his daughters. Was financial security really enough? He hesitated, knowing the answer deep down. As he glanced at Emma's downturned face, he felt a pang of desperation tightening around his chest. Behind the gilded door of his heart, his daughters craved more than the luxurious distractions he threw at them. They needed him, and he was nowhere to be found. The buzzing of his phone pulled him back to reality. Another urgent meeting awaited him, but this time a gut-wrenching thought stopped him. He put his phone down, knowing the looming decisions had to be made. Was he really going to be a father again? He was caught in his own golden cage, a billionaire with missed calls from his daughters echoing louder than any Wall Street transaction could. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The rising bile of anxiety gripped him tightly. Emma, face reddened, shattered the silence. You think any of this matters? Her voice cracked, raw and powerful. All this money? You weren't there when we needed you. You still aren't. Each word struck Jack like a physical blow, exposing raw wounds beneath his polished exterior. He thought he was building a fortress. Now he realized it was just a wall of denial. He felt the room close in on him, and the sweet scent of grilled steaks now felt rancid with guilt. Jack stumbled through the maze of his own making, frantically searching for a way to break free. His professional world was all about calculated risks and bold steps. Here, with his daughters, he was lost in immeasurable fear.
An article about a promising new therapy flickered on his screen, serving as a beacon amidst the chaos. Yet it also brought with it all-consuming doubt. This could be the solution, or another nail in the coffin of their hope. Would they want this? Could he bear the weight of another failure if things turned sour? The impending conversation loomed like a storm cloud, heavy with electricity and unspoken words. Jack felt dizzy, battling the rising tide of questions. If he asked them to take the plunge, would they say yes, or would they see him as just another failed attempt to cling to their past? The fine line between desperate hope and impending heartbreak quivered beneath his feet. He was a billionaire facing the greatest risk of his life, risking his daughter's trust, and all he could do was stand there, battling an ocean of insecurities. Would they follow him into the unknown, or had he lost them for good? The dim light flickered above the dining table as Jack sat motionless, his daughter's penetrating stares boring into him, igniting a whirlwind of emotions, the fear of inadequacy, the burden of hope, and a desperate need for redemption. In the face of their charged silence, he felt compelled to break through the paralyzing tension. Whatever moment he had envisioned for this conversation had morphed into a battleground of unspoken grievances and painful truths. "Emma," he began, surprisingly steady, "what if I told you I found something that might help you?" His voice held a tremor, a thin layer of confidence masking doubt. Lily, mute since the accident, glanced at her sister, her eyes reflecting curiosity mixed with skepticism. Emma's defensive posture softened slightly. "What is it?" she asked cautiously, her expression shifting from anger to tentative engagement. "A new therapy," Jack asserted, willing the words to carry the weight of hope he wanted them to embody. "It's experimental, but there are stories of miraculous changes. I could set up a meeting with the doctor tomorrow." Silence enveloped the room. Emma's lip quivered as she processed his words. More than anything, this was the first time Jack had opened the door to a different future, yet it felt instinctively dangerous. You really think something can change? Emma's doubt was palpable, her earlier bravado fading into vulnerability. I have to believe it can, he urged, standing on shaky ground, wrestling with the fear of making her expectations soar too high. I need to believe it, for you both. Jack's professional instincts kicked in. There was a plan to execute, his instinctive battle mode engaged by the urgency of the moment. The impulse to secure results clashed against his fear of overpromising. Yet if he didn't risk appearing foolish, he risked losing them. He couldn't escape the reality they had endured. He wondered whether it would ultimately shatter or strengthen their relationship.
I want to hear what you think, he pressed further, directing his gaze to each girl in turn. This is your call. I'll respect whichever way you decide to go. A heartbeat of stillness hung in the air, each of them considering the road ahead. Doubt hung over Emma's face, shadowing her features. Do you know what it feels like to hope and then have it all come crashing down, Dad? The incredulity in her voice struck him deeply. Do you understand what we've lost? His heart raced. He had faced plenty of opposition, yet this was personal. Every day, he confessed. And that's why I'm fighting for you. I can't rewrite the past, but I want to help find a different future. You both deserve that chance. Jack saw a flicker of something in Emma's eyes, an inclination to consider, a reluctant openness toward healing. He leaned into that light. Let's empower each other. What do you say? We do this as a family? Those might have been the words he needed to spark hope. Yet as they wavered in the space between them, he recognized that it wasn't merely about therapy, it was about rebuilding trust. But as each second stretched on, the tension sharpened again. Lily's gaze fixed on him, and a quiver rippled through Jack. What if he was entirely missing the mark? Perhaps his daughters desired peace more than chaos, acceptance over uncertain change. If their history taught him anything, it was that vulnerability demanded courage, and he still had so much to learn. You'd risk everything for this? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, he breathed, recognizing the impressionable weight of that single word. But the depths of commitment lingering just beneath the surface, both terrifying and liberating, were yet unexplored. The clock ticked ominously in the background, the weight of decision pressing down heavily. What if he lost them even more in his quest to fix the unfixable? Would they become closer by embracing this tumultuous journey shared, or would it alight more complex fractures? Before he could unravel those thoughts, Emma stood, shaking her head slightly. I need time, she declared, and Jack felt a hollow pit open in his stomach, the uncertainty surrounding her response heavy in the air. As she walked away from the table, he was left hyper-aware of the distance between them, the gulf of silent suffering, the loaded potential of what seemed an impossible path ahead. Would his daughters allow him to guide them out of their darkness, or were they lost to their own shadows forever? Jack had taken the first step, but where would it lead? The fragmentation of hope lingered, but so did seeds of possibility, and as he placed his hand on the table, feeling its cool surface beneath him, the looming question remained. Could he carry that hope forward and transform this moment into something enduring? The morning light crept into the house, illuminating the remnants of yesterday's tense reunion. Jack sat alone at the table, the memories of his daughter's expressions crashing over him like waves, each moment echoing back with sharp resonance. Emma's voice still lingered in his ears, the weight of her skepticism pressing on his heart. The furniture around him felt both familiar and foreign, a reminder of the life they once shared, now shadowed by lingering grief and doubt. He reached for his phone, navigating through the contacts until he found a number for the innovative therapist Emma had reluctantly acknowledged. Jack hesitated, biting his lip, the uncertainty clawing at his resolve. Would making that call demonstrate commitment, or would it show desperation? He had faced countless negotiations in his career, yet this felt entirely different, deeply personal and fraught with danger. With a deep breath, he made the call, each ring echoing his resolve. As the therapist answered, Jack's heart raced. He outlined his daughter's needs, emphasizing the urgency he felt. Despite his professional demeanor, a thread of vulnerability crept into his voice. The specialist's responses drifted over him like a lifeline, mentioning holistic practices, which required patience, a virtue he often struggled to exhibit within the confines of his business-driven mindset. This therapeutic journey would not have instant results. Once the call ended, Jack found himself standing at a crossroads.
Today's choices had to echo clearly in tomorrow's actions. Reflecting on the struggle faced as he grew up, often seeking approval and success at any cost, he realized now that active healing required not just belief, but enduring patience, something he could offer freely to his daughters. He decided to embrace a different aspect of his identity, the nurturing father, willing to listen, support, and prepare to walk a rocky path alongside them. Given their shared history, he knew this was the foundation that could lead them out of the darkness. After some thought, he picked up Emma's sketchbook, a collection of raw emotion translated into art. Leafing through the pages, Jack found himself moved by the depth of feeling within each drawing. They were fragments of her stories, capturing hope and despair, each stroke revealing a girl grappling with profound loss, but searching for self. As he traced the lines with his fingers, he contemplated a gentler approach, an invitation for Emma to explore her feelings, rather than coercive therapies she viewed skeptically. An idea formed. What if they dedicated time for creative sessions together? They could navigate emotions through art, gradually embracing the therapy that felt less like a medical procedure and more like a healing process through creativity. This plan struck chords of excitement while simultaneously reverberating with the fear of rejection. He departed the dining room, making his way to Emma's door. He knocked softly, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling in his gut. Moments later, the door creaked open.
Emma stood there, her expression unreadable. Yet an undercurrent of curiosity flickered in her eyes as she regarded him. "Hey, I was thinking," he began hesitantly, the words trembling on his tongue. "What if we set aside some time to draw? Just the two of us. We could share thoughts, feelings, whatever comes up." Emma crossed her arms, a defensive posture that both unnerved and steeled him. "You think that'll somehow fix things?" Jack felt the sting of her skepticism again and knew then that his earnestness had to outmatch her doubts. It's not about fixing. It's about sharing, understanding, exploring this together. Her gaze faltered, hesitation threading through her features. "And what if I don't want to share?" "Then we won't," he replied, maintaining eye contact with unwavering intention. "But I want you to know I'm here, even when you're angry or scared. I'm not giving up." He felt his heart pounding in his chest, aware that his bare honesty was both frightening and liberating. With every pulse, Jack sensed a nuanced shift in their dynamic, a fragile thread of connection being woven through their unspoken fears and hopes. A beat passed before Emma nodded slightly, a hesitant acceptance. "Okay, Dad. Maybe I'll think about it." As she retreated back into the room, Jack let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. While it was a small step, it felt monumental, a flicker of light igniting against the backdrop of wavering shadows. In that moment, Jack understood the journey was only just beginning. He had to be patient, to cultivate this relationship like a delicate plant, nurturing it with care while remaining steadfast amid uncertain progress. Would Emma follow him through the thicket, or would self-doubt hold them in stalemate? Jack returned to the table, acutely aware of the balance between hope and fear, now more intricately woven than ever. Though uncertain, he steeled himself for the path ahead as the weight of this new undertaking settled in. What challenges awaited as Jack and Emma explored the depths of their artistry and emotions? Would they both find liberation in the process, or would they risk deeper wounds in pursuit of healing? The quest for a different future echoed loudly within him, a call to action that couldn't be ignored. The following day dawned with a crispness that invigorated Jack's spirit. The sky was painted in hues of soft blue, a welcome change from the stormy clouds that had cast shadows over their lives for too long. As he prepared breakfast, anticipation bubbled within him. Today would mark the beginning of a collaborative art project, his chance to connect with Emma in a space where they both could express their feelings, frustrations, and fears. After breakfast, Jack walked to Emma's room, feeling the faint tremors of anxiety about initiating their creative session. He knocked lightly, drawing in a breath to bolster his courage. "Hey, can we start?" he asked, as she opened the door, a tentative smile playing on his lips. Emma's eyes flickered with a mix of interest and skepticism. "You really want to do this, don't you?" "I do," he replied sincerely. "Art can be a conversation without words. I think it might help us." "Fine," she said, crossing her arms again, but with less defensiveness than before. "But don't expect me to open up just because we're drawing." A small victory sparked within him. Her willingness to engage felt like a breakthrough, however slight. They headed to the living room, where sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating their makeshift workspace. Jack set out the supplies: sketchbooks, colored pencils, and charcoal.
He mixed his emotions of hope with a tether of apprehension. As they began to draw, silence enveloped them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Jack observed Emma carefully as she put pen to paper. The concentration etched on her face spoke volumes. He took in the way her brow furrowed, the occasional deep breaths she exhaled, as if she was finding release in every stroke. After a few minutes, Jack broke the silence. "What are you working on?" Emma hesitated, glancing at her paper before her gaze shifted to Jack. "Just a girl sitting by a window. It's not good or anything, just thoughts. Can I see?" With reluctance, she turned the sketch toward him. A figure with slumped shoulders and downcast eyes sat inside a soft outline of a window frame, a visual metaphor for feeling trapped. The emotion behind just that one image pulled at Jack's heart. "It's really powerful," he said, striving for encouragement. "It captures loneliness beautifully." Emma shrugged, but a flicker of pride brightened her eyes. "I guess, but it's just a sketch." "No, it's more than that," Jack insisted, feeling bold. "It's a piece of you. What if, instead of hiding from those feelings, you let them guide what you create? Sometimes the hardest stories make the best art." The air thickened with tension, and Emma looked away, the vulnerability of their interaction making her uncomfortable. Jack recognized that discomfort, the fear that came with opening oneself to another, a fear he too had experienced. He took a step back, focusing away from her moment of resistance. "Mind if I show you what I'm working on?" With a nod, she leaned in. Jack flipped open his sketchbook, revealing a half-finished drawing depicting a broad, desolate landscape. He had aimed to express an overwhelming sense of emptiness, paralleling his own internal struggles. It wasn't finished. Every line felt like it had untold stories locked within. "Why do you choose this?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It resonates with how I felt lately," he confessed, his fingers brushing across the paper. "Sometimes I feel lost, like I'm wandering in this vast space, trying to find my way back home, to you guys."
As he shared his thoughts through his art, the air around them shifted again, slowly thawing Emma's initial resistance. They weren't alone in their experiences. Vulnerability became a bridge between them. The session wore on, intertwining silence with occasional shared murmurs about artistic choices. For every tentative skill Jack revealed, he noticed a hint of admiration pooling in Emma's gaze, fostering a new sense of connection. She offered critiques and compliments, both surprising him and coaxing forth a determination he hadn't realized was brewing within him. Then, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Jack felt a pressing weight on his heart. "Emma," he ventured carefully, "what if I told you we can turn this art into our dialogue? We could explore your sketches, your feelings. We could create something together, a way to understand what we're both experiencing." Emma's expression shifted, intrigued yet cautious. "You mean like a shared project?" "Yes, we could build something from both of our perspectives. I think it could help, us understanding what we're going through. We're both struggling, and art opens doors." The prospect of collaboration hung tantalizingly in the air, yet Jack sensed the fear of vulnerability flickering behind her skeptical gaze. Would she embrace this new opportunity to dig deeper into her craft and, in turn, into their relationship? His heart raced, fueled by both excitement and uncertainty. He realized this was a defining moment. Was he ready to actively explore the intricate process of healing, both for himself and for Emma? But more importantly, could they navigate the emotional labyrinth together? And would this fragile thread of connection grow into something resilient? Jack held his breath, awaiting Emma's response, as the shadows of doubt and hope danced around them, echoing the battle ahead. Would they forge a path toward mutual understanding, or would they unravel in fear before taking the leap? Jack's heart raced as he resolved to confront the silence hanging between them. He had opened a door to deeper engagement, yet the weight of their unresolved emotions was palpable. Surrendering to the moment, Jack studied Emma's face, searching for the flicker of agreement or hesitation. "Let's create something real," he continued, trying to unfold his thoughts with clarity. "It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest. Maybe we can even use it to explore emotions we've been avoiding." Emma rolled her eyes, but a hint of interest softened her expression. "You make it sound like a therapy session disguised as art," she quipped, her tone light but her mind visibly churning. Jack chuckled, relieved that the tension had somewhat eased. "Maybe it could serve multiple purposes," he replied. "Art helps convey what words sometimes can't. Can you imagine the stories we could tell?" As he spoke, Jack found himself tapping into a stream of inspiration that had long been dormant. Sharing this vision with Emma was not merely about catalyzing growth for her. The journey was beginning to nourish his own spirit. He had often felt stifled by the barriers he erected around his emotions, and now an exhilarating prospect lay before him, a collaborative journey that could shatter those barriers.
He sensed Emma's resistance still lingered, like a shadow overshadowing her enthusiasm. Jack leaned in closer, voice low and encouraging. "This could be a fresh start for both of us. We can be raw and honest, discovering who we are amidst the chaos. Are you willing to try?" For a fleeting moment, he saw the walls in her eyes wavering, but then doubt clouded her brow once more. Jack wondered if she feared the deeper implications of art, how it could expose not just the layers of their struggles, but also the intricate beauty that could emerge from such raw honesty. "What if it just makes everything worse?" Emma replied, crossing her arms again. "I've tried sharing before, and it only left me feeling exposed and vulnerable." Jack's heart sank at her admission, recognizing the fear that stemmed from past disappointments. But within the depths of that vulnerability lay a shared understanding that could be gently unraveled through their art. "What if we approached it like an experiment?" he proposed, enthusiasm creeping back. "We can start small, with little sketches or thoughts. If it gets too heavy, we can pause or even stop. There's no pressure." An experiment, huh? Emma's skepticism seemed tinged with intrigue. Isn't art supposed to express big emotions? How can we experiment with something so visceral? "Exactly," Jack replied. "Art carries weight, and sometimes that's where the magic happens. The beauty often lies in the imperfections and difficult feelings. I believe we could surprise ourselves." As the sun streamed through the windows, casting golden hues on their workspace, Jack felt a flicker of hope igniting. There was undeniable potential for transformation. Perhaps both of them could learn to embrace vulnerability and uncertainty. "All right," Emma finally conceded, her voice quiet but firm. "But if this turns into a disaster, I'm out." "Understood. No disasters here," Jack agreed, a smile breaking through the emotional intensity. Their journey would begin with tentative steps into that uncharted territory. They drew their first sketches with tentative hands, the air thick with unspoken expectations. Jack shared snippets of his thoughts between strokes, while Emma offered quiet responses, testing the waters of this new dynamic. In that delicate embrace of creativity, Jack felt an urgency to express something deeper, a stirring realization of the potential this creative partnership might hold. He could already sense that this collaboration was about more than just making art. It was an opportunity to unearth layers of themselves, both hidden and raw. Yet, as the session progressed, a gnawing question invaded his mind.
Could this artistic venture genuinely serve as their pathway to feeling, or would they stumble as vulnerability hit its peak? The lines blurred between expectation and the fragile hope he was nurturing. Both were stepping towards uncharted territory, in art and in their relationship. As they faced the tension-laden silence, Jack felt an impending confrontation just beneath the surface, one that could either solidify their bond or tear it apart as they continued to paint their truths. What lay ahead was a volatile interplay of emotions. With that uncertainty brewing, Jack understood that their artistic journey was just beginning. The real challenge awaited just around the corner, the moment when all their hidden fears and deepest desires would demand to be confronted. Would they embrace the opportunity, or back away from the edge of emotional discovery? With each stroke of the pencil, Jack felt both the anticipation and weight of Emma's gaze. The air around them grew thicker, rich with the potential for honesty. In the midst of sketching a landscape, Jack's hand trembled slightly, revealing the thin boundary between clumsy enthusiasm and the sheer terror lurking beneath the surface. This was more than just ink on paper. It was a symbolic gesture, an attempt to unearth buried truths. "Look," he said, trying to sound more casual than he felt. "This doesn't have to turn out like a masterpiece. It can be whatever we make of it. Chaos, confusion, clarity." Emma's silent contemplation hung in the air. He witnessed her thoughtful furrow, a reflection of the inner battle she was waging against the vulnerability he was asking her to embrace. "I suppose chaos can be beautiful in its own way," she finally said, breaking the silence at last. There was a faint smile playing at the corners of her mouth, but Jack noted the way her walls remained partially intact. "Exactly. There's poetry in the chaos," he replied, emboldening himself. Could he nurture this connection through creativity, sculpting a space where both of them could break free from their self-imposed cages? Their sketches began to take shape, a confused yet engaging amalgamation of dark lines and uneven edges. Jack's eyes darted back to Emma, whose strokes were tentative, as if she wrestled every mark she made. He wondered if she saw this as a risk, exposing herself both artistically and emotionally. Maybe, he thought, this was urging them towards a mutual revelation,
one that could perhaps turn regret into acceptance. As they worked, he plunged deeper into his thoughts. Every stroke of the pencil seemed to act like an anchor, tethering him to a reality he often wished to escape. The rawness of creation allowed him to confront layers of himself he usually kept hidden, his long-stifled ambitions, fears of failure, and elusive hope for connection. "Jack," asked Emma suddenly, "what do you think we're actually uncovering here?"
Her question penetrated the creative bubble they had built, and he paused, considering it carefully. "I think we're discovering that we're both more than what we show the world. This process allows us to take off the masks, even if just for a moment." A thoughtful silence fell between them once more, and Jack returned to his sketch, but doubt gnawed at his insides. Were they truly ready to tackle the complexities of their emotions, or would the shadows of their past undermine every effort they made? Just then, Emma leaned over, her brow furrowing as she scrutinized his work. "It's not that simple, though, is it? You can't just erase the past, Jack." "I know that," he said, frustration bubbling in him. "But maybe we can learn from it instead. Maybe that's where the real art lies, accepting our stories and using them in a way that creates value." "Easier said than done," she muttered, but there was a hint of curiosity in her tone, a willingness to explore the pathway he was presenting. With his heart racing, Jack suddenly realized he needed to push further. "Okay then, let's bring our biggest fears to the canvas. Let's sketch something we're both afraid of. We can confront them together." Emma's eyes widened at the idea, and for a moment Jack felt a surge of fear and excitement race through him. Was he ready to face his fears so openly? He had always shielded himself from dissonance, steeping himself in the comforts of avoidance. But could an act of artistic bravery unlock something transformative? "Why not?" Emma replied slowly, an unexpected smile slowly emerging. "Let's see if that helps at all." As they prepared to reveal their deepest fears through colors and shapes, Jack sensed the air crackling with tension and expectation. He understood this moment was a precarious ledge, one that could either deepen their bond or send them crashing into uncertainty. The real emotional shakeup was yet to come. Could art truly serve as the vessel to facilitate not only maturation but redemption for both? The wheels of introspection began to turn, and Jack bowed almost instinctively to the gravity of this undertaking. Would the sketches breathe life into their fears, or would they become a mirror reflecting the jagged edges they both feared to acknowledge? Jack set his pencil down and took a steady breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing against him. The sketch before him transformed into more than just chaotic lines. It morphed into the embodiment of his anxiety. Each mark he made on the paper felt like a revelation and a confessional. As the fear of failure fought against the surge of creativity, he couldn't help but inspect the growing tension within him. Was he prepared to expose not just his vulnerabilities, but Emma's as well? "All right," he said, breaking the silence. "What are you afraid of? Let's put it on the paper."
Emma hesitated, her eyes darting away, searching the edges of her space, as if the very act of naming her fears would draw them closer, making them more tangible. In that instant, Jack realized the fragility of her courage. He instinctively reached for the pencil again, anxiously waiting for her response. I'm scared of being seen, of not being enough," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper, yet heavy with gravity. "Every time I share a part of myself, I'm terrified that people will either reject it or think I'm not good enough." Her confession resonated deeply within Jack. He shared that fear, the nagging self-doubt that often quaked beneath his exterior, the ever-present question of worthiness. "You're not alone in that," he pressed gently. "Every stroke we make here, together, it's us fighting against that fear. Let's capture that." Swallowing her hesitation, Emma picked up her pencil and began to sketch. Her movements gradually shifted from hesitant to deliberate as she poured her vulnerability onto the canvas. Jack's heart raced in sync with her revelation, realizing the power their exchange held. Both their fears were entwined, and by illuminating these shadows, they might just find themselves stepping into the light. Jack moved closer to her, focused on the cooperation rather than isolation. He glanced at their drawings, which began to release tension in the air, their amalgamation locating common threads of anxiety and insecurity. Encouraged by Emma's bravery, he laid his emotions bare as he echoed her truth. "I fear I'll never live up to my own expectations. I've chased goals that felt empty, thinking they could fill something inside me.
but sometimes they make me question if I'm even capable of pursuing what truly matters. As he sketched, each line imbued with the anxiety he had concealed for too long, Jack could feel an unexpected release. It was as if the pressure of unspoken aspirations began to dissipate with every stroke. He felt lighter, almost liberated, as their experiences entwined into the fabric of their canvases, a chaotic yet beautiful tapestry of growth and acceptance. The room filled with a new energy as Jack and Emma exchanged glances laden with understanding. Each confession swirled in the intimate space they had constructed, pushing against the obstacles that had long since dictated their narratives. In these moments, Jack recognized that this endeavor was not merely an artistic exercise. It had morphed into a journey towards self-acceptance and transformative courage. However, the specter of their past lingered like a shadow at the edge of the light they were discovering. Could they confront the lingering pain that had given weight to their fears? Jack's mind raced with implications of digging deeper. What if peeling back layers unleashed previously locked memories that could alter their trajectory? Jack, are we ready to show these?
This is so raw, Emma questioned, her eyes widened with a mix of apprehension and yearning. The question hung high above them like a knife's edge. Stepping forward could mean unveiling wounds yet unhealed. I don't know, he confessed, realizing how precarious their artistic journey had become. But I feel like we owe it to ourselves to try, regardless of the outcome. Jack felt the weight of their decision sink like stone. This was a definitive moment, a call to abandon the fears that had kept them shackled for too long. The act of unveiling could either lead them to clarity or further chaos. With newfound determination, they looked at each other. It was now or never. Would their willingness to confront the past usher in not just a breakthrough in their artistry, but a chance for deeper connection and healing? The future hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of their pens. Would they dare to confront the full spectrum of their emotions, or would the shadows of their fears reclaim the moment? Jack's heart thundered in his chest, the unsaid words hovering heavy in the air like dark clouds pregnant with rain. The solution felt tantalizingly within reach, and yet burdensome, coated in layers of painful history. As he watched Emma carve tentative lines into the paper, the moment transformed into more than a confrontation. It was the delineation between the past that had shaped them and the potential future that loomed ahead. "Let's do it. Let's share," he said before he could dissect the decision further. The simple affirmation felt monumental, as if he had just plucked the strings that induced a long-buried symphony of doubt. He felt the tremor in Emma's hand momentarily still, as though the weight of their mutual resolve pressed down on her. "Really?" she returned, her voice edged with disbelief. "Yeah," Jack replied, shaking off the last of his hesitation. "We're not alone in this. People out there, they want to connect too. We might not know it yet, but sharing this could free more than just us." Their gazes locked, and in that moment Jack read the flicker of understanding and fear in her eyes. It echoed the conflict within himself, the urge to break free from self-imposed chains and the instinct to retreat to safety. Emma took a deep breath, her pencil moving again. "Okay, let's put it all out there. Our truth, no holding back." Jack seized the opportunity, allowing his instincts to govern the moment. As they resumed their sketches, he could sense the stakes rising. Each stroke felt like a step toward liberation. The rawness of their art began to fracture the walls they had erected around their insecurities. With every additional line, Jack became engrossed in a dialogue with his deepest anxieties. He purposely directed his pencil over areas where he had previously left incomplete shapes, transforming doubt into expression. They were laying bare their scars, drawing hope and uncertainty intertwined.
The act was both terrifying and exhilarating. Past experiences rolled through his mind, those stifling moments of rejection and doubt, each recalled memory igniting the spark of growth within him. How had he lived for so long under a blanket of fear, paralyzed by uncertainty? Jack didn't fully comprehend it until now. What if they hate it? Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts, the tremor returning. Jack paused, remembering how often he had shunned feedback, how the disapproval of others had festered in his psyche like a chronic ailment. Even if they do, isn't that part of it? We need to share these parts of ourselves. Imagine if we never did. Wouldn't that leave a vast chasm of disconnection? The reflection on this simple truth was striking.
The chasm wasn't just a distance from others, it was a chasm within themselves as well. He saw her working harder now, less tentative and more emboldened, feeling her internal strength ripple through the room. The longer they engaged like this, vulnerability turning into creative expression, the more Jack began to believe in the catharsis that might come from it. But with hope came fear that they couldn't return, a realization that laying bare their souls had no guarantee of a positive reception. Moments turned into hours, their sketches taking on a life of their own, each revealing something deeper, angrier, and more beautiful than the other. As the session drew to a close, Jack's hands felt raw, his mind a whirlpool of emotions, confident yet doubtful. Then silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of their breathing. They surveyed their work, the masterpieces of their unfiltered thoughts sprawled across the canvases. Emma scrutinized her piece, tension etched on her features, and he felt a pulse of fear echoing inside her. "What if we're not ready for this?" she said, her voice now small. Jack's resolve strengthened. "But what if we are?" In that moment, Jack understood that whether they were truly ready or not was irrelevant. They had crossed a threshold. Would they now stop just short of sharing their truth with the world? "I think we have to show them," he murmured, the challenge echoing inside him. A voice inside him dared to ask if he could withstand the potential judgment that lay beyond their soak of artistry. An ultimatum loomed. Would he hide behind the shadows of fear, or step into the uncharted territory that could lead to genuine connection? With a tentative smile, he turned to Emma. "Let's open ourselves to potential. A step into the unknown," he said, and for the first time, the fear felt a little lighter. "Okay, let's make this moment count," Emma replied, her voice gaining strength. As they gathered their sketches, ready to unveil every truth cradled in vulnerability, Jack sensed the edge of transformation hovering just above them. What awaited on the other side of their unveiling? Would acceptance follow, or would they face their fears head-on?
The question hung in the air, electrifying, potent. Jack felt the pulse of urgency as they prepared to step forward. Would they hold victory in their hands, or grapple with defeat? The moment to find out was at hand. Jack could hardly contain the electric charge coursing through him as he stood before their canvases. Everything that had been bottled up for so long felt like an untamed beast straining against its cage, just waiting for the opportunity to break free. The moment of truth wasn't just external, it welcomed a confrontation with his own internal turmoil, unveiling layers of self-doubt and desire that had long been festering beneath a surface of bravado. "Are we really doing this?" Emma's voice trembled, bearing the weight of burgeoning vulnerability once more. Jack nodded, but uncertainty clung to him like a shadow. He had long been shackled by the fear of negative reception. Those memories from childhood flashed vividly in his mind, the taunts of schoolmates, the dismissive remarks from teachers, the implications that his creativity was mere folly. Hadn't he long opined that failure was too costly? Yet in this moment, Jack felt the boundaries of his previous self dissolving. Emma's unease mirrored his own, but beneath it was a flicker of hope, a realization that the act of sharing might not just be a leap into the unknown, but a reclamation of lost parts of their identities. "What if we expose too much?" she whispered, her eyes darting to the completed sketches that bore their souls. Fears of repercussions danced charted paths in her expression. "That's the point," he exclaimed, surprised by his own intensity. "We have to trust ourselves and the people out there. They'll see us. They should see us. And in seeing us, they might find the courage to embrace their own truths." Emma nodded slowly, her brow furrowing as she stared at the sketches once again. "But what if they don't understand?" Uncertainty curled deep within Jack, but he didn't want to succumb to it. Each time he had hidden his true self, he had robbed himself of connection. Maybe that's when the true dialogue begins. What we share today doesn't just belong to us. It might resonate with someone else feeling unworthy or unseen. Besides, understanding and judgment rarely align.
As he spoke, he realized he'd begun speaking from a place of conviction that he hadn't truly felt until this moment. An internal fortress of armor had begun to crack, revealing someone willing to gamble with vulnerability. "Let's do it, Emma. Let's open this door and step through," he urged. A chill crept along his spine, yet the warmth of determination pushed back against his trepidation. Emma moved closer to him, her hand brushing against his. "Together?" "Always," he smiled, feeling the sincerity of that word fill the void within him. It propelled him. With care, they positioned their canvases for display.
The moment felt sacred, two imperfect souls delicately merging visions into one transformative act. The spaces between their words narrowed as they prepared to take the first brave steps toward sharing their creative outpour. "Are we sure we want to do this now?" Emma asked, pausing again. Jack felt the weight of that hesitation resonating deep within him. "We're not choosing the easiest route, but we're choosing authenticity, and that's worth the risk." He glanced at Emma, no longer in a state of hesitation. Their sketches finally stood ready, not just images on paper, but expressions of truths hidden beneath past traumas. As they adjusted the display, Jack felt a deep pit form in his stomach. Could he really handle what lay ahead? The tension of other people's eyes scrutinizing their work darkened his resolve. Yet glimmers of hope flickered amid the shadows, forcing him to confront his fears. The way ahead was murky. What if feedback sent them spiraling back into their cocoon of fear? But Jack pushed that thought aside. Advancing into the unknown could forge unimaginable connections and redefine what it meant to be seen. "Okay," he said, taking a deep breath. "Let the world in." A resolute nod from Emma sparked fresh determination within him, though the thrill of potential rejection hummed at the fringes of his psyche. "Jack," she paused, her expression suddenly somber, "what if we're met with betrayal instead of understanding?" His heartbeat reverberated in his ears as he faced her. The question rattled deeply within him. How would he cope if their fears materialized, forging an even sharper divide rather than uniting them in shared experience? But amidst the rising dread, a truth anchored him. Even betrayal bore lessons, pathways to greater clarity and strength. "Then we rise from it," Jack affirmed, gripping Emma's hand tighter. "Stronger for having chosen this path together." As they prepared to unveil their artwork to an unseen audience, the boundaries of fear and growth pressed against them, ready for violation. What awaited beyond their creations? Would they find strength in exposure, or were the monsters of past wounds ready to attack? The moment had arrived, hanging delicately in the air. It was time to discover if their leap would land on solid ground or send them tumbling into darkness. The unveiling of their artwork felt like standing on the precipice of change. Jack exhaled slowly, grounding himself in the present as the canvases lay before them, their raw vulnerability projected on paper, symbols of an emotional journey they had embarked upon together. The countless hours spent drawing, discussing, and confronting their fears had led them here, at the edge of their comfort zones. "Are you ready?" he asked, gauging Emma's expression for signs of trepidation. She wore a determined look now, still faintly tinged with uncertainty. With a nod, they drew closer to the canvases, ready to share the essence of their experiences.
Momentarily, Jack felt a wave of panic surge within him. Would the world dismiss their work? Would the very act of exposing themselves lead to pain? Yet he fought against those thoughts, reminding himself of the journey they had taken, the late-night conversations, the tears shed, the laughter shared amidst their sketches. "This is our truth," he whispered to himself, seeking reassurance. Jack stepped forward, confidence surging with every heartbeat, and lifted the curtain of nerves that had enshrouded him. "It's time," he proclaimed, banishing the nagging doubts. This was not merely about art. It represented liberation for both him and Emma, the breaking of shackles that had restrained them for so long. As the canvases came into view, he felt the first notes of apprehension slip away, replaced by a wave of empowerment. He saw Emma's eyes widen, an unmistakable spark of pride shining through. In that moment, he knew that regardless of external validation, what they had created together was significant. It symbolized growth, understanding, and familial connection. People began to gather, peering at the artwork with curiosity. The initial murmurs of appreciation comforted Jack as the warmth of understanding filled the space. The raw emotions embodied in each stroke began weaving a story that resonated with others. This was not just their tale.
It belonged to anyone who had ever felt lost or unseen. Someone came up to Emma, eyes gleaming with recognition. "This is beautiful. I can feel your story in every line. You've captured the essence of longing and hope so profoundly." Jack's heart soared. He could see the tension in Emma's shoulders relax, the pride seeping in as she spoke softly, allowing her truth to breathe. "Thank you," she replied, her voice now steady, empowered by this connection. "This is really a part of my journey." One by one, more people approached, revealing their interpretations of the art and sharing snippets of their own struggles. Jack felt exhilaration wash over him with each interaction as the weight of isolation began to dissolve. His and Emma's fears were no longer a barrier, but a bridge to empathy and shared understanding. Hours passed, and as the crowd thinned, Jack looked at his daughter, her expression glowing with pride. "We did this, Emma," he said, a mixture of disbelief and joy washing over him. "We shared ourselves, and look at the connection it created." Emma, no longer the timid girl reluctant to reveal herself, beamed back. "I never thought I'd feel this way about sharing my art. I've been so afraid, but it feels good." There was a lightness in her voice, one that signified transformation. Jack knew in that moment that they had conquered something far greater than just fear. They had achieved connection, trust, and renewal within their relationship. The murky shadows of their past began to recede as hope found fertile ground in openness. Standing together, they grinned at each other, both relieved and proud.
"What's next?" Emma inquired, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. Jack felt the weight of his earlier self dissolve. The walls he had built were no longer needed. "Let's continue to create, to explore together. There's so much we have yet to uncover," he replied, energized by this new chapter that lay ahead. Their journey was no longer just about overcoming trauma. It had blossomed into something beautifully complex, artistry that reflected resilience, challenges met with kindness, and an evolving relationship built on trust. In that moment of triumph, with their top-of-the-line projects and heartfelt connections, Jack Thompson had transformed from a man lost in ambition into a devoted father, a man validated through heartfelt recognition of his daughter's struggles and their shared growth. They stood side by side at the threshold of a promising future, the experience etching a new narrative about vulnerability into their lives. Jack realized that the scars of the past did not fade, but instead turned into badges of honor as they continued to create their own story together. No longer just a billionaire lost in the weight of guilt, he was a father willing to nurture dreams, a guardian of new hopes, ready to embrace whatever came next. It was time to forge ahead, unafraid, inseparable, and convinced that their next masterpiece was just around the corner. Now is the moment to take action. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next incredible personal stories of transformation and triumph. Leave a like now to support the algorithm and ensure more stories like this reach those who need it. Comment below your reactions, thoughts, and any theories about this emotional journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful video with at least 5 friends who crave inspiration and hope. You need to support the channel so that we can continue to spread these life-changing messages.